Issaquah lost 11 young men and 1 woman during World War II, and on the face of it, that doesn't sound like very many people. But when you consider that the population of the town at that time was about 800 people, and everyone had really strong ties, either because they were related or because they were close friends, it had a significant impact, the loss of those 12 lives. One of the efforts at home was to engage in sort of civil defense. They set up a spotter's tower at the fire hall, and all the residents in town took turns sitting up in the spotter's tower, and they kept a log. So you would have a 2-hour shift, and you would sit up there and just look for enemy aircraft. And the spotter's log contained a detail of what went on. And most of the time, the note was either that there had been a fire call or that it was all quiet. And sometimes there were notes having to do with weather conditions or holidays, or maybe the fact that the person after them never showed up or was late. One of Issaquah's achievements during World War II was raising $100,323.90 in 1943 in 1 month during the war bond drive. And this entitled the town to its own namesake fighter plane. And they had a contest among all the school children to name it, and the winning name was the Chief Issaquah.
The war was very prevalent in this Seattle area because most everybody either worked at Boeing, worked at the shipyards, and everybody knew everybody that was in the service. And just on my little street, there was about 6 guys had to go to the service.
Uncle Sam says, "I want you." And so I went down and joined the Navy. I didn't want to go in the Army and lay in some foxhole, and I joined the Navy. They stuck me in the air branch of the Navy, and after a few months over at Pasco, where we had a boot camp, they went to San Francisco for 9 days, and from there I ended up in the South Pacific on different islands. I was down there for 19 months before I got back to the States.
You look like Army material. I said, "Why do I look like Army material?" And he said, "Well, you've had this training." I said, "I'm willing to, I'll call at my expense. I'll call my commanding officer at the State Guard in Seattle, and he can explain it to you." "No, we don't have time for that. Put this man in the Army." I was shipped from Fort Lewis to Camp Roberts, California by Paso Robles. And I went right into the infantry. The worst possible thing that could happen to me now has happened to me. And I was on KP the following Sunday morning, and the first sergeant came to get me. I said, "Where am I going?" He said, "Get your gear, you're going to a different barracks." So you don't ask any more questions, you just go.
It was all kids that went to school in Issaquah, and you might not have known the kids, but you knew the families, or I knew usually younger kids in the family.
My brother Wilbur was a year behind me, and we grew up together, slept in the same bed, went to the same room at school, we did everything together. World War II started, I went in the Navy, he went in the Navy Air Corps and ended up as a Marine fighter pilot, and didn't see each other for hardly only once during the 4 years of the war until we came back after the war.
Most of the boys that went in the service had never been out of Issaquah. And going to Seattle was a big thing.
I think as far as I'd been, all my life was in downtown Seattle, and that's when we used to haul veal calves down in Seattle to the public market. Other than that, I hadn't been any place.
They sent me to message center and code work training. So I thought, well, at least I'm not carrying a rifle and in a foxhole. And so I took my training there for 3 months. Now I'm shipping out. They load me on a big 2-ton truck along with a bunch of other guys. Sent me 50 miles south to Camp San Luis Obispo, California, to an infantry outfit gathering together to go overseas. So I got 11-day furlough in 3 years before they shipped me overseas. That's the last furlough I got. And I got to Hawaii for more training, and I was there 2 weeks, and the commanding officer called me in, and he said, "Soldier," he said, "we're overstrength. We got too many men in our outfit." I thought, well, this is strange. you're a combat outfit and you got too many men, if you get into combat, you're going to lose men. He said, no, our table organization is too high. He said, you're one of the last guys in our outfit, so I'm transferring you out. I said, where am I going? He said, oh, you're staying in the same battalion, the same regiment, but he said, you're going to be a medic. I said, a medic? The only thing I've ever had in the way of training is high school public health. About 2 weeks after I joined this infantry outfit, I got my medical training. And when I talked to the first sergeant in this company out at Dole Pineapple Plantation, I said, when do I get my training? I said, I was told I was going to get training. I don't know a darn thing about medicine. He said, oh, you'll get it. He said, it starts tomorrow. He said, after breakfast tomorrow, you report back to your tent. And he said, I'll have another guy go with you. He's going to take medical training too. So they came and got us the next morning, went back to our tents. The guy said, now you straddle this cot, army cots we were on, and you face him like you're sitting and looking at each other. Here's a needle and a syringe. Now you stick him in the arm so you can learn to hit the veins, because you can go right through a vein, you know, if you don't hit it proper. And he said, then you have to pull it back out and try it again until you get it. One would stick the other one until he could hit a vein or an artery. Then when you get sick to your stomach from the needle and the pain and everything, then it's your turn to stick the other guy. That was the first medical training I got.
And everything was very patriotic. It's just amazing when I talk to people that lived in other areas, they said, well, we knew there was a war, but it didn't change our lives. But here it was really a big thing, because before that there wasn't any work.
We loaded ships, airplanes, we supplied the front lines, we took off wounded, all that kind of stuff. We were in a Nats C-47s, flying cargo and so forth, and we were on 3 different islands in the South Pacific, just south of Guadalcanal. Hot, mosquitoes, malaria, dengue fever, food was lousy, water was lousy. It wasn't any fun. I was there for 19 months.
We shipped out to New Guinea, and that was our first time of combat. I had 4 landings in New Guinea, from one end of New Guinea to the other. We landed in the Milne Bay, which is the southern tip of New Guinea, and only about 400 miles from Australia. And there was a bomber who used to come over every night. There's a big mountain range right from the beach, right the whole length of the island, and we were always fighting that. There were a lot of Japanese there, but the Aussies had already pushed them over to the big mountain range, the Owen Stanley Mountains, and so there were just spotty attacks. We mostly set up crews out on the trails, because jungle trails are just like a tunnel. They grow right over you, and you get just off the trail a little bit, and they set up machine guns, and when the Japanese troops would come along, we just mow them down, and then we have to bury them. Guys, some said, oh, the heck with this noise, and then an arm would be sticking out or a foot be sticking out or something, and tell that they give away our positions, you know. And the rest of us were on the beach with the Japanese would bomb us every night.
Women loved going to work during the Second World War, because for many of them it gave them the first chance of having money that they actually earned themselves. And if there were kids at home, they just knew they had to pitch in. You could get little books of saving, and I think that was like war savings stamps or something like that. And I don't know, I think maybe you had $5 worth after you got this whole book filled up. And they would have air raid practice, where you got under your desk. I'm sure if the bomb hit the school, that wasn't going to be much protection. I didn't know very much about the ration stamps, but In a small town, of course, they have a little bit more time to help you. So I would just take the book and say, you know, I don't know how to do this. And so I would get a few things and they would take out how many stamps were needed.
Then they shipped me to Baltimore, Maryland, and we were going to go to 6 weeks gunnery school to go to China for the invasion of Japan, and they dropped the atomic bomb and the war was over and I had enough points and I got discharged and came back to the farm.
Just one big bomber, Japanese bomber, would come over the mountains every night, and here's the peak of the mountain here, and we had Klieg lights and everything else, and the lights would pick up this bomber and look like a big white fish up there, like a big old whale, and they dropped their bombs and leave. About a month before we left, they came over. They didn't hit us, but headquarters down the beach about 3 miles got hit and killed a great number of guys because they were supposed to be back of the lines. They're always back of the line, and they got it that time. When I landed on Gang Gulf, the 4th wave, we almost drowned. We lost, in my outfit, we lost about 28 men because there was a sandbar that nobody knew about. The coxswains didn't know any more about it. We did, running the landing craft. And a lot of them came in, hit that sandbar, thought it was the beach, lowered the ramp. Guys went out with all their equipment on and drowned. But Mark Coxswain, we were lucky because he came, hit the same sandbar, but he didn't lower the ramp. He gunned it when he hit and went over the sandbar, and we went another probably 100, 200 yards before we finally did hit the beach. And we were still up to our waist in water. But we're so loaded down with my medical equipment and my ammo and other stuff that if we didn't have the beach under us, we'd have been in real trouble.
We would save grease, and then we would sell that back at the butcher shop because that's supposed to help make bombs, I think. I think the whole thing was just to get people feeling like they were doing something. And then you could throw your aluminum cans? Well, I don't know if things even came in cans anymore, but pans and that sort of thing in this big pile down on Front Street. There was a big pile of aluminum. And I heard later that that kind of aluminum wasn't even really used, but everybody felt like they were helping to build airplanes. You have to have really good blackout curtains or not turn on your lights during those times. And so we would just turn on the radio and listen to the radio in the dark.
My one younger brother, Jerry, and cousin Bruce, along with my dad and them, they had to run the farm during the war. And there was no picking because you couldn't get tires for a tractor, you couldn't get rubber for the milking machines, you couldn't, oh, it was a tough time. They didn't have any picnic. And I worried about that, and then I was having not a very good time myself.
We even took our Red Cross armbands off our arms because they'd pick the medic first. Guys that were the snipers, they'd aim at the armband, get you in the chest or through your body anyhow, and killed an awful lot of medics that way. And then they go after the troops. So I didn't wear an armband. I didn't give them any more chances as possible. But I went down after my first combat. I went down to the supply office and I insist on getting a carbine. The small rifle holds 15 shells.
When you go to the movies, it was full of news reports about the bombings and that sort of thing. And the countries in Europe, the people were shown walking down the road with all their possessions. I don't know where they were going because it seemed like every place was in turmoil. We didn't know why war started. And I don't think very many people did because we only knew what the government wanted us to know. There was a big thing down on the corner that had the names of all the boys that went into the service. And then if they were killed, there was a gold star put on that.